Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about the Beastmen in Radious Total War for Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. And honestly, I think this might just be the very best race in Radious Total War. Not in the sense that they're the strongest, not in the sense that they work best with the changes Radius makes, but rather in that of all the races affected by Radious Total War, they are the ones most impacted compared to the vanilla game in a very positive fashion. Beastmen in the base game are outdated. They were redesigned in Warhammer 2, but Warhammer 3 is not that game. It's a very different beast. It plays differently. And the problem with vanilla Beastmen is all the limitations on unit capacity and army capacity, on heroes. They do end up hurting them quite a bit. It's not that they're weak, they aren't, but all of those kind of limitations, as well as using dread for everything, doesn't work quite well. Now, you still have dread for a lot of things, but you don't just need to rely on it in order to get unit capacity. I mean, you can see over here that I have a ton of unit capacity for all kinds of different things over here, but I haven't spent a single point of dread in this tab whatsoever. In fact, I haven't touched this tab at all. Like, the only upgrades I've gotten right here are getting confederations with legendary lords, getting a couple of Herdstone upgrades, that kind of stuff, right? And that's because of how Radius does things. So one of the things, and I might just have to recruit an army over here to try and stop the attack there. But what Radius does is, from the very start of your campaign, you do get an extra army. And beyond the fact that you get an extra army, you also have a lot of inherent unit capacity for all these kind of units. Or at least most of these kind of units. That's already a significant win. So it means that your armies aren't just whatever units you can recruit from structures when you get them, and whatever inherent unit capacity you do have, but rather, as well as Ungor Raiders, but rather you from the very beginning would be recruiting things like Ungor herds with shields, Gore herds, all that kind of stuff. Again, from the very start of your campaign, not later on. So extra army capacity, extra unit capacity, that already is a significant win. But then we go further. Marks of Ruination, or rather the rituals over here, have also been changed in their own way. So you no longer just get like, oh, you get 1 extra army capacity. No, you get 2 extra army capacity, 3 extra army capacity, all those kind of things. And then, Herdstone shards, you gain quite a few of those as well. So for instance, over here I have 3 Herdstone shards, and I do also have a Herdstone active, so I have 4 in total. That's one thing. But it goes further. Because Beastmen structures from their armies also increase unit capacity as well. So unit capacity for Minotaur units, all of them. Unit capacity for Gore units, unit capacity for Bestigore units. Every tier you get unit capacity for all these units. So instead of the baseline game situation, where again you're spending dread for everything, you no longer have to spend dread at all. You get unit recruitment capacity through structures. Now that does push you towards having horde armies, absolutely, but you do have more horde armies from the very beginning. And it means that Beastmen, in which in the base game, yes, they do use money, but it's mostly for structures and some items, they actually do balance out between these two resources. You can still use dread for the record. And you gotta decide, okay, how am I gonna balance it between structures, unit capacity for money, unit capacity for buildings, versus unit capacity through dread and all that kind of stuff. As opposed to, just saving dread, getting all those upgrades, ignoring unit capacity, focusing on heroes because it's just much better to focus on one hero versus, even increasing 1 Minotaur capacity. As an example. Sure, there's diminishing returns, etc., but that is a big point with regards to the Beastmen situation. So that's already pretty damn good. It goes further on this subject. Because individual Beastmen units, even though I haven't upgraded this here because I've been using money on other things, you also do have a system of the scrap upgrades. Sure, it's like with the Bretonia situation that I talked before, where you can only get one upgrade, but it means your individual units are... You also have that individual unit customization, which makes them better. So you get, things like missile resistance, all that kind of stuff. That does inherently make your units better in combat. So instead of just being incentivized to spam heroes and get lords and all that, you are actually incentivized to get units. So all those, and because you have more units inherently through the various systems, and the fact that Radius itself also provides more units, like, you think of Bestigor Herd with spears, for instance, and they have silver shields. They're pretty good infantry. You just look at Herd, so you have spears and you have shields, but basically it's spearmen with shields right there for Bestigors. And that's pretty freaking awesome, because it means that Beastmen armies are no longer just a pile of rubbish that's useless. A lot of different units are very, very useful. Like, you look at the kind of armies I have here. So I have 2 armies. Sure, not necessarily a huge amount of armies, so I could have had more. But I've been prioritizing longer-term growth and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm sitting around the campaign map. I'm dealing with things. I've built up armies. I have a significant level of power right here. And yeah, turn 21. You would never do this in the base game as the Beastmen. There are, of course, other balancing aspects to go with it. Like, for instance, I've fought quite a few battles, and I think, like, the gain of momentum has been slower. And I think Dread as well in itself kind of ends up being slower paced in some way. So you may not gain as much Dread, you may not get as much momentum as Tarks, or rather or at least that's how it feels like. I could be wrong on the specifics on it, but it has certainly felt like momentum or Rampage has been ramping up slower than it has been in the base game. But that's fine, because instead of Tarax just killing everyone in a single turn, or once he gets to Rampage level, it's a slower build. By the way, that actually makes... Yeah, it takes Rampage more time to get useful, but once you do get going, it's like... is significantly better, I think, if I'm correct on that subject. So that's pretty damn good, everything I've stated so far. Of course, there is the research tree, there's hero skill lines and lord skill lines that could be adopted. I mean, we do have, Radius does provide the new lord, the Shaggoth. Not Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, just regular Shaggoth. So he's like, got regeneration, pretty big and monstrous thing in combat. Pros and cons, of course, with regards to him. I believe he has Siege Attacker, which kind of is a big deal for Beastmen, because, they want that, sieges and all that. And on top of, extra units, various lord effects being changed and all that kind of stuff, or added, like... Oh, actually, I think our extra army capacity was just for Tarax. I might have been mistaken. I mean, obviously, when I'm playing Beastmen, I just default to freaking Tarax, so it's like, if I got that wrong. But then again, Tarax kind of does need it the most, because he's kind of in the most tricky situation where that does matter. So maybe you don't start with extra army capacity, but you do gain more through rituals of ruination. Like, for instance, +4 army capacity, Herdstone shards, all that. Okay, pretty good. Here's the final point. Your Herdstones are now actual settlements. And really powerful ones, too. I mean, you still have ridiculous garrisons, but they also work as regular settlements, except for hero capacity and hero recruitment. Well, actually, you do have hero recruitment, sorry. It's just more the question of hero capacity, but that's fine. Hero capacity is increased through Dread. Okay, fair enough. So it is a question of, like, you can recruit regular units through Herdstones. And obviously you could before, that's not different, but now you have all these different structures that add unit capacity, are giving you faction-wide benefits. If there is a bit of a downside with this, it's more that this only works on provincial capital. So if you do it in a minor settlement, you're gonna get the older type of Herdstones. Still pretty useful, of course, in their own way, shape, or form, but not as useful as provincial capitals Herdstone. So that's kind of a factor to take into consideration every campaign besides Tarok. So Tarok benefits a lot from these changes. The other ones, a bit less or more friction until you realize what you're actually dealing with. But that's fine because Tarox is the most played Beastmen campaign by far and easily the most accessible one as well. But regardless, this is bloody amazing, and I'm not joking. Like, sure, Malagor, Mogre to a degree, but Malagor especially because, he starts next to a minor settlement. They may have a bit of a slower early game compared to Tarox, but once you realize that, or you just decide not to claim that initial settlement as your Herdstone, you kind of do start steamrolling as them as well. And that's the thing. It gives you a lot of power, gives you a lot of flexibility, makes things more fun, more army variety, more lord variety, more hero variety. And it's not just the case, we added a bunch of units. No, they added not just more units, but systems in place to sustain those units and incentivize players to actually use them. I mean, let me just give you a perfect example of this. If we look, first off, I have a lot of unit recruitment capacity, so I could recruit this army all over again very quickly. But just look at the amount of units I have. Like, I have all kinds of Minotaurs. Sure, I've been recruiting a whole couple of things, but I got feral manticores, I got minotaurs with shields, a couple of them are poison hunters, which are basically raiders, just better. And you even have like better stuff at lower tiers, right? So we could think about like gore herds with halberds. You might laugh at the notion of gore herds actually being worth a damn, but they actually are, because when you look at these guys, like gore herds with spears in particular, they've got bronze shield, 61 armor, 65 leadership. One of the big problems of Beastmen, and one of the things that Radius does for virtually every race, is the fact that because units are more balanced in terms of armor across all races, it means races have better balance in terms of auto-resolve. And that's important not just for you as a player, sure, fighting less battles that you're going to win and you're wasting your fucking time. But it's also important for the AI. So this actually makes Beastmen AI more threatening, really. Obviously, Beastmen AI will always struggle to use these resources effectively. Like, Kazra got wiped out here in this campaign, Mogre was doing nothing. But at least the systems are designed in such a way that it could allow that potential, if only the AI was actually better. And it also means that those random AI armies of Beastmen that spawn are not just free experience in the game. Which does create some frustration, I'm sure, but it also just means that the game is better overall. Like, this is what a good racial design does. It doesn't just elevate the race in question, it elevates the entire game when it's done properly. And that's why the notion that I keep hearing all over the place is like, some races need to be weak, some need to be strong. That doesn't create a good game. That creates a inverted difficulty curve or really broken game. Because when something's clearly better than something else, especially in the hands of the AI, it's not leading to good campaigns. That's why I consider the Beastmen redesign of Radius for unit capacity, buildings, etc., money spending, to be a fundamental upgrade to Warhammer 3 compared to vanilla. That's all I had to say. Quistine signing out.